Welcome, everybody, to the Off the Mic Wrestling Show here on YouTube. I'm Mike Mayer. Appreciate you all tuning in. Thursday Mailbag edition. Normally we do a mailbag, but there's a ton of news going on. All in this Sunday. We'll have picks. Also got some thoughts on NXT and what's going on there. But let's start with really what is the big story, and that is Fightful Select has reported and confirmed that Ricochet has signed with All Elite Wrestling. He is All Elite. This is not a surprise. This is not a shock. This is not any sort of breaking news or something that is like any sort of shocking to the wrestling sphere. But it's a big deal. I will give it that. Ricochet is a big time wrestler and star. There's a reason why it didn't work in WWE. He was average to below average in terms of promos, but he is going to AEW. I would expect him to show up, if not at All In, it's going to happen within the next couple of weeks. I would expect him to be on television relatively soon. Maybe it happens at All Out, because I'm assuming Will Ospreay, spoiler alert, I think Will Ospreay is beating MJF for the American Championship and rebranding it as the International Championship, which would mean he's facing Pac in Chicago at All Out in 2 weeks. I think it's 2 weeks from Saturday, early September. So I would expect Ricochet to be on television relatively soon. The question is, with Ricochet, how is this going to look? Because the obvious first place that they're going to go is they're going to roll him out and they're going to get him ready to face Will Ospreay, because that's the match that everybody wants to see. The problem is, what the fuck's going to happen after that? Because I'm telling you right now, Ricochet ain't beating Will Ospreay. That's not happening. Will Ospreay, to AEW's credit, with some of the disasters that they've had with their signings of late, Will Ospreay has been a home run for them. And they've beaten him twice this year. They beat him twice in a span of in 3 weeks, I think. They beat him. MJF goes out and beats him in that bullshit finish, which I have spared no expense in telling people how much I did not like that finish to the near 60-minute match that they had on Dynamite 250. And then he also loses Swerve Strickland for the world title, but Swerve Strickland needed to win that match. So my problem is, after you have the Ospreay Ricochet match, where does Ricochet go? And this is the whole problem with AEW, is they bring in all these hot, shiny names, and unless you are a major star who can kind of carry through a lot of this, like a Bryan Danielson, you're not going to last. Or if you're an Adam Copeland, you're not going to be able to last. And all due respect to Ricochet, he's a phenomenal wrestler. He is not going to have the staying power to be okay, we're going to keep him on Dynamite every single week. He's going to end up being on Collision facing somebody like a Hologram, or he's going to end up being basically like a Pac. Because if you think about it, Ricochet is kind of what Pac was when he was Adrian Neville, or Neville, in WWE. A phenomenal wrestler, but just could not get on television, could not get booked. And then he goes to AEW, has this massive build, and he beat Kenny Omega at the first All Out. Yes, that happened. But he's been injured. He's been in and out of programming. He's going to be on All In, which is great, in just a random thrown together trio. Spoiler alert for those of you colliders. I'm sorry I'm spoiling the 400,000 of you that watch that show that has been dead on arrival since CM Punk left the company, after the show was specifically made to bring him back, even though he didn't want to be there. But that's my problem with Ricochet here, is everybody who's going to hype this up is oh man, Ricochet, we got one over on WWE. Really? There's a reason Ricochet's not there anymore, okay? All due respect to him. He wasn't fitting the mold of what they were trying to do on television, and he did good business in putting over Braun Breaker on the way out. His girlfriend, fiance, is the GOAT of ring announcers right now, and is on her way to being one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion, in Samantha Irvin. But outside of that, Ricochet really He's just been there to, like, put on matches. And it kind of makes him fit in AEW. But the problem is, once you get past that initial honeymoon phase, for most people who have been brought into this company, it just sort of dies down. Like, Mercedes Moné is a perfect example of this situation. And she hasn't lost yet. But nobody gives a shit anymore because the novelty of her showing up and being in AEW and being a cornerstone piece of this company has worn off because she hasn't been good. And she hasn't been booked well. And I don't have the confidence in AEW to put Ricochet in a position to where he is positioned as a top star. So for anybody who is trying to prop this up as anything more, is great for him. He is going to land and he's going to be in a place where I think he can do what he wants. And, he can wrestle a bunch of bangers. Please Dave Meltzer and all these geeks who are into 6.5-star matches, who are watching this in their basement and don't have the money to show up and go to AEW, which is why AEW's numbers are in the tank, because nobody outside of the average wrestling geek is watching AEW television right now. So, like I said, more power to him, but again, I think that this is going to register on the Richter scale of something like seismic, like CM Punk showing up there? No, of course not. And I like Ricochet, but stop trying to act like this is some sort of like seismic shift in the wrestling sphere. This has been expected for at least a couple of months. It made a ton of sense. But my problem is, what is going to come of this after the initial presumed match that he's going to have with Will Ospreay, which is the whole reason that he's going to AEW, is that, hey, that's the match that everybody wants to see that's on the table. So, speaking of people in that company that are probably on the way out, what the hell is going on with Ricky Starks? According to this call, and I haven't listened to the audio, but if you look at transcripts, Tony Khan was asked about Ricky Starks and his contract situation. And apparently, he is still under contract, despite heavy rumors that he's already ready to go to NXT, and NXT is already rumored to bring him in. What in the fuck is going on with this situation? Ricky Starks has not been on television since he lost the tag team titles at the end of February to Sting and Darby Allin when he was teaming with Big Bill. He has not been on television since that point. Didn't even make Revolution. He has not been there and on television in like 6 months. He turned down one creative push, creative like assignment or plan that had him feuding with Big Bill that wasn't going to do anything for either guy. It's been known that Ricky Starks, and he's shown up at some WWE events. He's a big time Cody guy. Cody and him are best friends. Cody is a big reason why AEW pushed to sign Ricky Starks in the first place. But we always knew that this was where it was going to go. You could see the natural charisma. You could see Ricky's ability to engage an audience and cut a promo. You saw the way he was able to adapt on the fly when CM Punk, he was feuding with him. CM Punk gets fired, goes out and has an amazing feud with Bryan Danielson. And I think as a result, was finally rewarded with a championship. Ricky Starks should have done a hell of a lot more in AEW than he did, outside of being the FTW champion, which, all due respect to Taz, that title has meant jack shit in the grand scheme of things in pro wrestling. But why is Ricky Starks still under contract? Why at this point, especially with Tony Khan running his mouth about WWE tampering with people? Oh, really? That's rich. What the fuck happened with Adam Copeland? Adam Copeland had a match in late July, right before SummerSlam last year, against Sheamus in his hometown of Toronto. Did not work until his contract expired at the end of September. Almost took an entire 2 months off of television, and literally the day after his contract expired, he had a video package ready to go, and he literally showed up with this big rollout at Wrestle Dream to close out that show in Seattle. You're not going to tell me that you didn't try to tamper while WWE was holding Adam Copeland under contract? Adam Copeland's a legend. But you're also going to tell me that, hey, you weren't talking to Ricochet. We all knew that he was going there. So don't tell me, spare me with all this tampering talk. let Ricky Starks go and let him go to another company, because it's been known for at least 6 months, maybe even more than a year, that Ricky Starks was going to end up in WWE. And the reason you're holding him there is because you are a petty, shallow, just deeply flawed human being in terms of you don't know how to run your company. And then because a guy that you don't like the way things are going, and you don't like that he's not going to sign with you, you're just going to keep him and hoard him on your roster, not utilize him, even though there are people that get television time that I don't understand why Ricky Starks isn't on television if he's still on your roster. You are wasting a space. So hearing that today really irritated me, and just like, Ricky Starks is so goddamn talented, and it's ridiculous that we haven't seen him on television in 6 months. And I listen, whenever he leaves and ends up in WWE, and we'll talk about this in just a second about what I think it's going to look like for Ricky Starks in WWE, AEW is going to regret not finding a place for this guy. And some of this is just a product of the fact that, it just didn't work out. But there was an opportunity to make something work, even when Cody wasn't there. And I just don't get it. I just do not get it. Like, Ricky Starks was a #1 contender for a world championship. He was the first challenger to face MJF in his historic reign. And they could not find anything to do with this guy because he got thrown into the Jericho vortex. And we know Chris Jericho is just a goddamn cancer in that place. He keeps hoarding away television time from people because he keeps trying to latch on to the diminishing legacy that he once had. And it's really sad that it didn't work for Ricky Starks. But I don't doubt that he's going to have success in the other place. And let's get to that right now. I think Ricky Starks should go to NXT. And here's why. If you look at the main roster structure right now, I think it is a better situation for somebody like a Ricky Starks. And you're seeing it with somebody like an Ethan Page, who's now the NXT champion. NXT is where it's at, people. It really is. It is not your father or mother's NXT from years ago where it was developmental. This is where it's at. And you're seeing, like, the shows that they're putting on. They're going to be on broadcast television with CW. Like, it's where it is. And it's where characters get built. It is where, there's really engaging storylines and really good character development. And I think that's where somebody like a Ricky Starks could shine. I could see him starting off in the smaller portions of trying to build him up to a potential NXT North American title feud or a NXT title feud. He could have him feud with somebody like even Joe Hendry is hanging around there. I don't know. Tony D'Angelo would be interesting. I think him feuding with Trick Williams would be outstanding for somebody, a young guy like a Trick Williams, to get somebody as experienced and still relatively young as Ricky Starks. So I think anybody who's trying to dismiss, and I know AEW cultists are like, oh man, he can't even make it on the main roster of WWE. Dude, AEW can't even put him on television. Him being on NXT is an upgrade, in my opinion. So I can't wait to see Ricky Starks show up in WWE. And I think, yeah, just because if he doesn't end up on the main roster and show up on SmackDown because he's boys with Cody, that's not a death sentence. I think he would actually do really well with a year in NXT and then potentially be getting called up to the main roster because he's just that effing good. Speaking of NXT, need to address this. The ending of NXT this week was fucking outstanding. Joe Hendry facing off against Pete Dunne and facing off against Pete Dunne and Wesley for #1 contendership to determine who faces off against Ethan Page for the NXT title at No Mercy in Denver, first week of September. I think it's September 1st. So this match was so interesting, and just like everybody seemingly thought that Joe Hendry was going to win, but they did their best that they could possibly do to convince you that Joe Hendry wasn't winning this match, because Ethan Page stopped the pinfall off of a standing ovation, took a referee out. A second referee tries to run in, and Ethan Page is distracting the referee while that's going on. Pete Dunne hits a bitter end. Meanwhile, Trick Williams comes in, hits his trick shot knee. He throws the first referee back in. Joe Hendry hits a standing ovation for the win. Joe Hendry, TNA wrestler Joe Hendry, is main eventing No Mercy for the NXT Championship against Ethan Page. And how that is going to stack out with him already having some heat with Josh Alexander, and there's rumors that Josh Alexander, a former tag team partner of Ethan Page in TNA, it's fascinating what is going on with that. And then after that, you have Wesley on the outside getting attacked by Zachary Wentz after he turned on the Rascals. So you got through multiple storylines to set up. You have obviously Trick and Pete Dunne, still their feud going on. You've got Ethan Page and Joe Hendry. And then you've got Zach Wentz and Wes Lee. And this projected card that I posted up on my Twitter, this is freaking great. Everybody who wants to rail on NXT, they have been booking some shows. Wesley and Zach Wentz, I would assume, would be on that card. Chase U and Axiom versus Axiom and Frazier, the rematch, that has already been announced. Kalani Jordan's going to face Wendy Chu for the women's North American title. Obafemi, I'm assuming, is going to face Tony D'Angelo. They set that up as Tony D'Angelo finally lost the Heritage Cup. That's a great little feud for Obafemi to help get him over. The Gauntlet Eliminator to determine the women's contender, because they're really just place filling until Stephanie Vaquer and Julia show up to just enhance how great this women's division is. Jada Parker wins the match. She's been great. I thought Sol Ruca made a lot of sense here, but I kind of get why they're trying to keep Sol maybe away from the NXT Women's Championship picture, but she's been so great. But Jada Parker has a great opportunity against somebody as great as Roxanne Perez. And then Ethan Page versus Joe Hendry. I mean, what else can be said about this? What they have done with a non-WWE contracted wrestler, what Shawn Michaels and WWE and NXT have done, is nothing short of remarkable. This guy is the top babyface in two places. And I would totally expect that Ethan Page is probably going to retain the title in this match because of Josh Alexander, because there is already some crossover appeal in this feud that would make this really, really interesting. So NXT's cooking, people. So if you want to say that Ricky Starks is losing out by going there, potentially, I think Ricky Starks is a perfect fit there. And the way Shawn Michaels has been handling shit over there, I think it's something I'm really looking forward to. All right, let's pick this. Let's go through our predictions here for All In before I sign off here. Hit that subscribe button here at OT Mike Wrestling. Follow the show, OT Mike Wrestling, on Twitter, and follow me at Off the Mic 28. Love feedback. I mean, if you think I'm an idiot, I'll tell you you're an idiot, because, in my opinion, I'm just speaking reason. And I think I'm trying to speak reason to a bunch of fanboys who have no idea what they're talking about. But I am really excited for this All-In show, and I think it should be very interesting. So, only one match announced for 0 Hour at this point. There's 9 matches, I believe, announced for the main card. The 0 Hour show, it's a mixed tag. Willow Nightingale, Tomohiro Ishii taking on Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway. Winner chooses the stipulation for the match between Willow and Stat at All Out. And I think this is going to go one of two ways. It's going to involve... I get the feeling that Stokely Hathaway is going to play into how this happens. My gut tells me that Chris and Stokely are going to win this match. And Stokely is going to somehow, do something nefarious and do something illegal. Ishii he's not going to be involved in this. And I think Chris is going to pin Willow, and Chris will pick the stipulation for the match at All Out. That makes the most sense to get the heels some heat going into this match to set up what I would think Willow, because I think it's going to be a CMLL Women's Championship match, whatever, even though we shouldn't care about that championship. But I think Willow as the babyface, should come out on top in this. And so I think ultimately Willow will kind of get screwed over here in the mixed tag stipulation. And so Stat and Stokely will win that match. Then we get the Casino Gauntlet match. Some of the announced names so far: Orange Cassidy, Hangman Page, Mark Briscoe, Kyle O'Reilly. There's a lot more that are expected to be added. Maybe Ricochet's in this. Maybe John Moxley's in this. Listen, I think Hangman Page is winning this gauntlet. It's the only option, in my opinion, considering how well they've built him, and considering, frankly, all due respect to Bryan Danielson, it should have been Hangman and Swerve in the main event. I understand the big deal of his potentially being Bryan Danielson's last match, but Hangman Page is winning this match. I'd be stunned if anyone else wins this gauntlet match at Wembley Stadium. Then we get the London Ladders match that's on the card here. Patriarchy, the champions, defending against House of Black, the Bang Bang Gang, and spoiler alert, Pac, Wheeler Yuta, and Claudio Castagnoli. I'm really happy that Claudio and Pac have gotten on this. All due respect to Wheeler, he's done next to nothing since coming back from his concussion. This feels like a thrown together team and just an excuse to get a couple guys on this show. I think the Patriarchy is probably going to win this. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Like, there's been you got to legitimize these tag team titles at some point. I will say this: there is a decent chance that maybe the Bang Bang Gang wins out here with a returning Jay White. I could totally see that scenario playing out, but the Patriarchy, I think, in my opinion, has got to win. Otherwise, what are we doing with these championships? You're just going to keep changing the reins all over the place. Then AEW World Tag Team Title match, Young Bucks, FTR, and the Acclaim. This has been a horrendously booked division. You've got an ice cold Acclaimed, a semi-okay FTR is just so effing great that you can't help but not root for them, or help but root for them, because they're just the best. Like, they're the best tag team in the world. Although Dax needs to cool it with some of the Twitter activity. The Bucks have got to retain here. Otherwise, like I said, you're basically just tearing down the Elite, and it just doesn't do anything for me. Especially considering this is only going to be the second title defense for the Young Bucks since they won the championships, which is just insane to me, considering this is a company that prides itself on tag team wrestling. So I have the Bucks winning this match. I would assume that the Acclaim gets pinned here. Again, just no steam behind the Acclaim. They're just there, in my opinion. This was one of the hottest tag teams in the company and in the world 2 years ago. And now nobody cares about them. So a match that, you know what, I like Hook. I don't know why Chris Jericho's getting this spot. FTW Championship stipulation is it's a last chance match. Hook can't challenge for it ever again. If he loses, Hook's winning. Otherwise, what have we been doing for the last 4 months in setting this thing up? Hook needs to win here. Like, that's the only acceptable finish. Coffin match for the AEW TNT Championship between Jack Perry and Darby Allin. I have no fucking idea how this is going to go. Zero idea. This is Darby's match. He hasn't lost a Coffin match since he got to AEW. Jack Perry has barely defended the championship since he won it in June. Darby's got a world championship match next month at Grand Slam already on the books. So I have no idea how this is going to go. My guess is I would say Jack Perry wins this match by some sort of technicality. And Darby, does a coffin drop and falls into the coffin and it closes. And that's the way that we get this, finished. So that way Darby is kind of protected in losing this match on sort of like a technicality. But yeah, the more I think about it, I think Jack Perry's got to win this match. So there's that. TBS title between Mercedes Moné and Britt Baker. Mercedes has to win here. Otherwise, again, I know, maybe if Britt wins, maybe they could just do a hard reset of Mercedes' character and just, kind of reboot this whole thing to the point where we can actually start caring about Mercedes Moné, a.k.a. Sasha Banks, again. But Mercedes is going to win this match. Otherwise, I don't know what the point of this whole thing was. Britt doesn't need to win this match. I honestly think that this may be the first match of several, potentially. Although, that being said, I don't know if I want to see a second match. So, I'll go with Mercedes here. Maybe there is something to set the stage for the next phase. I think Jamie Hayter's going to be on this show, whether it be after the women's championship match, which I'll talk about in a second, or after this match. I get a feeling Jamie Hayter is going to show up on this show. It would feel like a missed opportunity. Maybe she's not ready, but if she's healthy, I think it would be a huge opportunity to maybe do something here. American Championship match, MJF versus Will Ospreay. The further I get away from that 20-minute promo segment last night on Dynamite, the more pissed off I'm about it. Because Bryan Danielson in 30 seconds did everything that you needed to do in what you could have cut off half of that promo. Like MJF could have bloodied Ospreay after getting personal and not having to do a lot of the talking in between that you could have done in the build of this feud to begin with. This match is going to probably be one of the matches of the entire show. I'm really looking forward to this. The only acceptable finish, as I've been saying on this channel repeatedly, is Will Ospreay hits the Tiger Driver, hits a hidden blade, and just wins the match. And Wembley Stadium goes apeshit, and Will Ospreay is your international champion. He rechristens it as the American Championship, and we finally get through just some of this like very uneven booking that has been this feud. It's like I said, it's been handled okay, and there's a lot of heat behind it, but there's been some missteps and some question marks going through the process. And like this promo last night, just the more I get away from it, it wasn't an all-time great promo. I'm sorry. You didn't need to go 20 minutes. It was longer than the one that MJF did with CM Punk, which I thought was one of the best in the history of this company. It went 3 minutes longer than that, which is just insane to me that it took that long to get to that. And then Bryan Danielson, 30 minutes later, just telling Ospreay to fucking do it in referencing the Tiger Driver. That's all you really needed to really enhance this feud. So, a lot of questions there. Women's World Championship match, Toni Storm versus Mariah May. I've got Mariah May winning the Women's Championship here. I think this is the spot where I'd have Jamie Hayter show up. You may be asking yourself, well, then if Jamie Hayter's showing up, what's that going to do for Mariah May, considering she just won the championship? Well, maybe Toni Storm wins. I don't know. I just think that the way that they've set the stage for this whole thing, Toni Storm has, been the champion for a really long time, and it feels like a crowning moment potentially for Mariah May, given the length of this build and the way this was set up. But you have some doubt considering Mariah stood tall on Dynamite last night in Cardiff. So there's that. And then the main event, AEW World Title versus career, Swerve Strickland versus Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson is winning the championship here. I would be stunned, and this is not to disrespect Swerve Strickland. He's had a fine, decent world title reign. It's not anything spectacular. But this was always going to be the plan for Bryan Danielson, to stand tall on the biggest show of the year with the AEW World Title. He'll have a brief run with it, maybe loses it to Darby Allin at Grand Slam. Maybe he loses it back to Swerve or Hangman at Wrestle Dream in Seattle, and that sets the stage for Swerve Strickland to face Hangman Page later in the year, which is what everybody wants to see. But whatever happens, Bryan Danielson is winning the championship here. So it should be a good show. Some of the build has felt a little bit clunky in spots. I would expect, maybe Ricochet shows up in that gauntlet match. Maybe he is kind of a surprise show up after the International or American Championship match. We'll see. But yeah, this should be a fine show. All the people trying to trump it up, hey, we passed 50,000 tickets. This is a great thing. You guys were trumpeting that you sold 80,000. I understand that there's a little bit of a modification to the format of the way Wembley Stadium is structured because of some Taylor Swift engagements over there in London. Let's not kid ourselves. This sold 80 to 81,000 tickets last year, and you're going to be at what, like 55? Granted, you had a decent push at the end here, but let's not oversell this. Like I said, AEW still has some problems. Anyway, so that's the Mailbag Show. Thanks for listening. we'll hopefully have a dynamite rating. I'm seeing some numbers that it might be under 700,000. That's not surprising, given it was going up against the Democratic National Convention. But again, we'll talk to you guys on Friday with a SmackDown recap, and we'll be doing some stuff over the weekend for All In as well. Talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye.